Have you ever noticed how the people who hurt us the most often feel impossible to forget, how the ones who never fully show up somehow occupy the most space in our minds, how the silence of a person can echo louder than the affection of someone who truly cares? And have you ever wondered, quietly, maybe even shamefully, why the absence feels intoxicating while presence feels boring, why the heart races for the unavailable and relaxes for the safe, and whether this pull is not romance at all, but something far darker, older, and more psychological than we want to admit? There is a moment most people remember, even if they try not to. A moment when a message didn't arrive. When hours passed, then days, and the phone stayed quiet. And instead of relief, instead of clarity, there was a tightening in the chest, a restlessness in the body, a sense that something essential had been taken away. Not love. Not security. But anticipation. That feeling, the one that creeps in during the waiting, is where this story truly begins. Because attraction does not always grow in warmth. Sometimes it grows in cold spaces. Sometimes it grows in rooms where answers never come. From the outside, emotionally unavailable men often look unremarkable. They are not always cruel. They are not always arrogant. Often, they are calm, detached, self-contained, moving through the world as if nothing can truly reach them. They listen, but they do not reveal. They show interest, but never urgency. They step forward, then step back, leaving just enough presence to be remembered, and just enough absence to be desired. And the unsettling truth is that for many women, this distance doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like gravity. The mind does something strange when it encounters emotional unpredictability. When affection is consistent, the nervous system relaxes. It knows where it stands. But when affection is inconsistent, warm one moment, distant the next, the brain cannot settle. It starts searching for patterns. It starts replaying conversations. It starts asking questions that have no answers. What did I say wrong? What changed? What does he really feel? And slowly, almost invisibly, the person who offers less begins to take up more mental space than the person who offers everything. This is not weakness. This is wiring. Deep inside the brain, there is a system designed not for happiness, but for survival. It pays more attention to uncertainty than to safety, more attention to loss than to gain. When something feels unpredictable, the brain treats it as important. It releases chemicals not when pleasure is guaranteed, but when pleasure is possible. And so the emotionally unavailable man becomes a slot machine of hope. Every interaction feels like a pull of the lever. Maybe this time he'll open up. Maybe this time he'll choose me. Maybe this time I'll finally understand him. And hope, when paired with uncertainty, is one of the most addictive emotional states a human can experience. What makes this darker is that the attraction often feels meaningful. It feels deep. It feels intense. Women describe it as chemistry, as connection, as something rare and powerful. But intensity is not intimacy. Intensity is what happens when the nervous system is activated, when the body is kept in a state of alert. Real intimacy is calm. And calm, for a mind trained by uncertainty, can feel unsettlingly empty. Many women don't realize that they are not falling for the man himself, but for the version of themselves that appears when he pulls away. The self who becomes more alert, more emotionally alive, more focused. The self who feels challenged. The self who believes that winning his affection would mean winning something valuable. Because when someone seems emotionally unreachable, the brain assigns them higher worth. If access is limited, the mind assumes there must be a reason. This is where the illusion begins. Emotionally unavailable men often carry an aura of self-sufficiency. They do not chase. They do not explain. They do not seek reassurance. And in a world where emotional expression is often mistaken for neediness, this restraint gets misread as strength. But restraint is not always confidence. Silence is not always depth. Distance is not always power. Sometimes, it is simply avoidance wearing a sophisticated mask. Yet the attraction doesn't fade when this is pointed out. Because attraction does not operate on logic. It operates on perception. And perception is shaped by contrast. When warmth is rare, it feels precious. When attention is scarce, it feels earned. And when affection must be chased, it feels meaningful. The mind starts to associate emotional pain with emotional value, mistaking the struggle for proof that something important is at stake. There is another layer to this, one that rarely gets spoken aloud. Emotionally unavailable men do not just withhold emotion, they create a mirror that forces the other person to project meaning into the silence. And the human mind, when given empty space, does not leave it empty for long. It fills it with stories, with hope, with imagined depth. The less someone reveals, the more mysterious they seem. The less they explain, the more powerful their presence feels. And slowly, without realizing it, a woman can fall in love not with who a man is, but with who she believes he might become if she just tries a little harder. This is where attraction quietly crosses into attachment. Because attachment is not born from love alone. It is born from inconsistency. From emotional gaps that the mind keeps trying to close. Every delayed response becomes a puzzle. Every brief moment of closeness becomes a reward. And rewards that are unpredictable are the hardest to let go of. The brain doesn't say, "This hurts, I should leave." It says, "This hurts," which means it matters. At some point, the relationship becomes less about connection and more about regulation. The woman is no longer asking, "Do I feel safe with him?" She is asking, "How do I get back to that moment when he seemed close?" Her emotions begin to orbit his availability. A good day depends on his tone. A bad day begins with his silence. And the most unsettling part is that this emotional roller coaster can start to feel like passion. Calm starts to feel dull. Stability starts to feel suspicious. And chaos starts to feel like proof of depth. There is often a quiet fear underneath all of this, a fear few want to name. The fear that if someone loves you easily, maybe you are not that valuable. The fear that love must be earned through endurance, through patience, through proving your worth. Emotionally unavailable men unknowingly tap into this fear by never fully choosing. Their distance creates a test without rules. And many women, without realizing it, start trying to pass an exam they never signed up for. What makes this pattern repeat is familiarity. For some, emotional unavailability feels like home. It echoes early experiences of love that was conditional, inconsistent, or withheld. The nervous system recognizes the rhythm. The mind confuses familiarity with safety. And so the heart keeps gravitating toward the same dynamic, believing that this time the ending will be different. This time, he will open up. This time, the silence will break. This time, the distance will close. But emotionally unavailable men rarely change inside relationships built on chasing. Because chasing confirms the very thing that allows them to stay distant: control. When someone else is always reaching, they never have to risk vulnerability themselves. They can remain protected, contained, untouched. And the tragedy is that the more a woman tries to connect, the more invisible she can begin to feel, until she is fighting not just for his affection, but for her own sense of worth. There is a moment, often quiet, when awareness begins to creep in. A moment when exhaustion replaces excitement. When the highs no longer compensate for the lows. When the waiting becomes heavier than the hope. This is usually when the question changes. It is no longer, why doesn't he choose me? It becomes, why am I choosing this? And that question is powerful, because it shifts the focus away from his distance and back toward her inner world. Healing does not begin by demonizing emotionally unavailable men. It begins by understanding what their distance awakens inside us. The craving for validation. The belief that love must be proven. The association between uncertainty and desire. When these patterns are seen clearly, their spell weakens. Attraction starts to reorganize itself. Calm no longer feels empty. Presence no longer feels boring. And consistency begins to feel not dull, but deeply nourishing. Real connection does not leave you guessing. It does not demand that you earn basic care. It does not thrive on anxiety. Real intimacy feels steady, grounded, and mutual. And for someone who has been addicted to emotional unpredictability, that steadiness can initially feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. But discomfort is not danger. Sometimes, it is just the nervous system learning a new language. The dark side of attraction is not that emotionally unavailable men exist. It is that they teach us to confuse emotional deprivation with depth. The light side begins when we learn to recognize that what feels intoxicating is not always what is healthy, and what feels calm may be exactly what allows us to finally rest. And when a woman no longer chases emotional distance, something remarkable happens. She stops being pulled by absence, and starts being drawn toward herself.